You plus me, I plus you, we, us, together are going to be creating this cool Next.js application that's going to be using AI, fetch APIs, whatever, name it. We're going to be using this to create a cool Marvel application. Yes, I know, I said Marvel application. However, this is going to be with all new modern design, all new modern interface. Everything about it is going to be modern. So before I toot my own horn, let's go ahead and see that demo in action. When we open up our application, we're brought to this beautiful login page. We can go ahead and log in using test. We'll go ahead and log in. We're brought to this beautiful hero page. As you can see, we have our banner here, and on the right, we have this sliding navigation page. We can go ahead and close that. This is a Marvel application, meaning we're going to be getting data from a Marvel API. Now, you will just see how far in advance this goes. So when we scroll down, we can see Discover Comics, where we're fetching comics from the Marvel API. We're fetching characters here, and now we're using TMDb to fetch titles such as movies and TV shows from TMDb's API endpoint. So now if we scroll back up, we're also at the top here, we can see this open chat. We have this AI chatbot that you can use to get comic recommendations, character info, which you can then input into the Discover Comics, Discover Characters, or Discover New Titles input field. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. So if you scroll down here, now all we're fetching right now is just Wolverine comics. All we're fetching here are all the characters that start with the title Black. So if we scroll down here, we're just getting things such as Marvel for the titles. Now, like I said, it goes even further. If I click on this comic, Wolverine 2024 #1, and I scroll down, you can see it states you might also like here. What it's doing right now is it's fetching, based on this comic, various recommendations using AI. The AI it's using, it's OpenAI's GPT-4o to fetch data. The way it does this is really interesting, so it will be explained or revealed to you as we code. Also, on this modal, what you can see is it has the option to save an item, and it also shows you the print price for this comic and the digital price for this comic. We can go ahead and click Save Item, and as you can see, this heart appears on the comic. That's really cool. Why? Because now if I click out of this and I come over to my nav bar and I click Saved, I can see that comic within my saved page. So now if I click on this comic again, I am met with the same modal. The only difference now is we're not given the option for AI recommendations on this. We can only see the description. And if you do want to place the AI in there, you can go ahead and do that as well. Just as we're able to add comics, characters, and saved entertainment within this saved page, what we can also do is delete them. So we can go ahead and hit this icon, and now there are no longer any saved items in our saved page. But if we come back over here, the cool thing is now you can also see that this heart shape has been taken off. That is because we're in sync with our database. We know what's exactly in our database at what time, and we're able to portray that on our front end. Another cool feature is now, if I go ahead and click View All, I am able to search comics with the comic title and or the comic issue number. For example, I can type in Wolverine Enemy of the State and go ahead and hit enter. And as you can see, that comic appears. So I can now go ahead and click that. And as you can see, it shows me the Wolverine comic. It's still also fetching different comics that I might like. But in the meantime, I can go ahead and save this item. As you can see, I have this heart shape here, or I can unsave this item and this goes away. And now at the bottom here, I can see all these comic names. I can see them right here. Also, I can go ahead and click them and it comes up on my modal, and I can go ahead and save this. And I also can see the print price, digital price, and it shows also here that it's been saved. I can also unsave it here. This, guys, is really cool, if you ask me. And now I can go ahead and just clear out of this. And that's it. So now if we come over to your favorite characters, we can do the same thing. So let's say I want to search for Spider-Man. Awesome. Now I can click on any Spider-Man here and it's gonna load. This is gonna load the same way, except here we have comics. It's gonna tell me all the comics that this Spider-Man has featured in. So this is Spider-Man 1602. If I scroll down, these are all the 1602 comics that Spider-Man has featured in, as you can see. So if I now click on any of this, it's going to tell me if there's a description available. If I keep searching, one of them will have a description, and there we go, Spider-Man 2099, issue number 10. It says the description right here. I can go ahead and save this item, and I can also scroll down and see you might also like, and these are all characters that I could like as well. This is Spider-Man Noir, and let's just click on this, for example, and it's going to show me the comics as well as the image form. So here are all the comics designated for this Spider-Man. I can go ahead and click on this. It's going to tell me the description if there is one. I can go ahead and save this as well. Now I can close out of this, and I can close out of this, and I can view less. Lastly, if I come down to my titles, I can go ahead and view all. Now let's just view Captain Marvel, for example. We go ahead and click on that, and you see the trailer. I can go ahead and click on that trailer, and it plays. I can save this item, and when I save it, it's saved in my saved page. It's still also looking for other items that I might like. Let's give it a second as it fetches all the other items via the recommendation AI. Now, as you can see, it shows me other items I might like. Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor Ragnarok, Iron Man, Doctor Strange. Let's hit Black Panther, for example. First, let's save it. You don't have to save it in order to do anything. I just want to save it. And now I can go ahead and click this. As you can see, it comes up with the description, trailer from YouTube. I can go ahead and click play, and it plays it perfectly. So now that we've saved everything within our saved file, let's go ahead and see everything that's in there. We can view less here, open this, go to saved, and as you can see, we did not save any comics, but we did save characters and we did save entertainment. Now, if I clicked on this saved entertainment item, it shows me the same thing. I see Black Panther, I see the trailer, and I also see the description. This is really cool in terms of the UI and the UX and how we implement AI feature into it. Now, if I scroll back and I want to go to comics, I can go ahead and click the Marvel logo. I'm taken back to the hero page. As I'm taken back to the hero page, I can scroll down. Let's just say, for example, I want to search for Thor issue number 5. I can go ahead and hit Thor number 5 and go ahead and enter. As you can see, it brings up all the various variations of Thor issue number 5. I can go ahead and click on it. As you can see, it says Thor 2020 number 5. I can scroll down, I can save this item, and as you can see, it tells me the print price here and the digital price. I can scroll down here, it shows me all various comics. For these ones, there are no image available. You can keep scrolling, there are no images available here. But does it still save? Yes, it does. I can go ahead and click this one, I can close out of it, close out of this, view less. Now, if I come over to saved, I can see that Thor right here is being saved. Avengers is also being saved. Here, there's no image as there was no image over there, but what we can do later on is place a placeholder in there to take the place of the image. But that's pretty much it, guys. This app to me is the coolest thing you're gonna see on YouTube, if I might say so myself. But let's get back to me over there yapping. As you can see from that demo, I wasn't kidding when I said this is going to be the coolest Marvel application, or just the coolest application that's going to be built on this platform, or maybe even on YouTube. I don't know, maybe, I don't know. But without further ado, let's get right into this. But before we go on, don't forget to smash that like button, comment and subscribe to see more of these. But with all that said, let's get right into it. Alright guys, so I went through the installation process for the Next.js application within my folder. Now, all I also did was I placed the .env file within my root folder. So the reason I did that is to save my credentials. So I have a bunch of credentials saved in there. Now, just a disclaimer, this is more of a high intermediate to an advanced project. So I'm not going to be basically explaining every little thing I did, because in my other videos I kind of go over a lot of things in depth. This one I'm not going to be doing. Like, for example, I'm not going to be going in depth on how to create a login or a register form. The CSS here is going to be limited in terms of explanation, so I just want to put that out there. So now that we have this in there, I have also connected my MongoDB to my application. So I have my Mongo URI in here. So if I do things on a whim, just know a lot of things that I'm going to be needing are already in my .env file. So before we go ahead, these are the two main places we're going to be getting most of our information. We're going to be needing TMDb, so you're going to be needing an account with TMDb to get the API, so you can make API calls to TMDb and get information back. You're also going to be needing a Marvel API account. Both of these are free. If you're asked to pay for it, get out of there. They should be free. So these are where we're gonna have these are where we're gonna be getting most of our data from, or fetching most of our data from. These are the endpoints. So that's basically it. So with that said, let's go ahead and start installing our dependencies. So now we're back in our application. What we're going to do is we need to install our dependencies. So here we're going to do this together. So we have npm install Axios, we have bcrypt. Let's make sure we're spelling that right. Bcrypt. We have Jose, and that's for our JWT tokens. We're going to be needing React icons. We're also going to be needing let's install these for right now. Let's make sure they're all installed. Cool. So the last two things we need are going to be fetched from Google. So we're going to go ahead and type in React YouTube. So we're going to come over here and we're just going to copy this, or we could just grab it this way and then we can close out of it, and then we just go ahead and copy that. Let's install that, and then we need one last thing. So we're going to go back to Google and we're going to search for React Markdown. There we go. So now we just come in here and we're just going to grab this. Now when we come in our application, we can do that. We can take out this part. We don't really need this. In fact, let's say npm install here, React Markdown. There we go. And we're all set. So now let's go into our JSON config, our package.json, and see that everything's been, there we go. So everything's there. So for some reason, when you put install React Markdown, npm install React Markdown, it gives you the latest version 9.01. But if you say npm I React Markdown, it gives you a lesser version. So just go ahead and write it out as we did it, npm install React Markdown. Cool. So that's pretty much it for our dependencies. Now let's go ahead and configure our application. So if we do a npm run dev right now, and we open it up, as you can see, it's going to say this. So we have to clear this out. And the easiest way to do that is just delete a bunch of files. So let's go ahead and clean this up. Great. So now we've cleaned up our application. All it should say in our homepage now is hello world, as we have hello world within page.js found within our source folder and our app folder. So if we go over there, you can see the hello world here. And also what I went ahead and did was I created the components folder within our source folder, and within our app folder I have the API route. I have the API folder. So this is where our API routes are going to sit. So with all that said, now we can get into the actual nitty-gritty of our application. So to begin with, the first thing we're going to do is set up our backend. So that's what a large portion of part one, this part, is going to be. So what we need to do is come into our source folder, create a new folder, and this is going to be called model. And this is where most of our schemas, well, all of our schemas for our database is going to be housed. So the first schema we want to create, well, we're going to have new file, and the first schema we're going to create is user.js. So here is our user schema. So now what we want to say is export mongoose. Oh, that's one thing we forgot to install. So we should have installed mongoose. So let's go ahead and close this out and say npm install mongoose. Great. So now we can npm run dev again and just reload that. So here we can now say import mongoose from mongoose. Awesome. And we're going to say const user schema is equal to new mongoose. Let's take this out. Okay, so we have new mongoose.schema. Awesome. And what we need is the username, and this type is going to be string. We're going to be needing this to be required, and we're going to need this to be unique, and this is true. Next, we're going to need the email, and this is going to be type of string as well. We're gonna need this to be required true, and we're gonna need this to be unique, and this is gonna be true. And we're gonna say password. Here the type is gonna be string, and we're gonna say required is true. Let's make this required. Awesome. And what we want now, timestamps, not time series, we want timestamps. And for our timestamps, we're gonna want this to be true. Cool. And here we're gonna say const user is equal to mongoose dot models dot user, or mongoose dot model, and this is gonna be it's gonna be called user, and this is gonna be user schema. Awesome. So now the next step is we want to create our MongoDB utils folder. So we're going to come into source folder again. We're going to create a new folder, and this is going to be called utils. There we go. And this is going to house our MongoDB.js. Here is where we're going to make our here's where we're going to connect via code our application to our Mongo database. So I'm not going to go through this with you guys, because in my last video, that was what this was about. I literally made the video before this just because of this. So I'm just going to go ahead and speed run through this and get back with you guys. Awesome. So here within our utils, this is the MongoDB.js. This is it. So we're just saying const Mongo URL. So we're getting this from the .env file. This is what I saved my Mongo URI as. I saved it as Mongo URI. So I'm getting this. And then I have this, if there's no Mongo URI, throw this error. And then I have the database connect, which is mongoose.connection.ready state. All this has been done in the previous video. So I don't want to take too much time on this project. I don't want to extend this project longer than it has to be. So I'm just going to do this. I just created this on the side, and that's pretty much it. So you guys can pause the video and kind of look at it if you don't want to go to the last video, and just copy and paste what I have here so far. It's pretty straightforward. If you want more of an explanation, you can go on to the previous video. Great. So now after we do this, now we want to get to code in our backend. So here within app, we're going to come to API, and within API, we're going to create a new folder, and this folder is going to be called register. And within register, all we're doing is creating our register backend. So when a user registers, this is the backend code that's running. So we're going to go to register, and then within register, we're going to create a new file called route.js. Cool. So here, in order to begin, we're going to be importing user from did I call it modal or should be called model? And we can make this smaller. There we go. From model/user. Cool. And now we also want to use bcrypt, so we're going to say import bcrypt from bcrypt. We're also going to say import database connect from utils MongoDB. Awesome. Now we're going to say export async function. It's going to be a post method. We're going to take in a request, and here we're going to await database connect. That's because we want the database to connect while we're doing this. So we're going to say const, and from the front end, we're going to be taking in username, email, password, equal to await request.json. Now we're going to say try. It's going to be a try catch. So within try, we're going to say if there's no username, or if there's no password, well, or if let's do email first. If there's no email or there's no password, Then we can say return next response dot JSON, and this is going to have a message. Please provide credentials. Awesome. And we're going to have a status of 401. Now we can state if there is a existing user, so existing user, then we want to state await. Hold up, we made an error. Awesome. So we're down here. Okay, so now we can say const existing user is equal to await user.find one, and we're going to be searching using the email. So let's make sure. Okay, so this isn't connected for some reason. So let's go over to our model. Let's see. Oh, we didn't export it. So this should have export default user. That is why. So now, there we go. Now this is connected. So we have email. So we're using the email. And we're going to say if we do have an existing user, then we want to state return next response dot JSON. The message here is going to be user exists, please log in. And this is going to also be a status code of 401. Great. So now if the user doesn't exist, so if we don't have a user existing user, what we want to say is const new user is equal to new user and this is going to be username. So we're taking in the username, we're taking in actually before we do this, let's hash our password. So we're going to say const hash password is equal to await bcrypt dot hash password and salt it. There we go. So now we're taking in username, we're going to take in password, and this is now going to be hash password. And then we're going to be taking in the email. Awesome. Now we can say await new user dot save and return next response dot JSON with the message registration successful. There we go. And now we're going to have the status code of 200. Great. So now for the error, we're going to say console.error, and this is going to be registration error, and we're going to pass in the error. And here we're going to say return next response.json, and this is going to be message internal server error. And this is going to have a status of 500. Cool. And just like that, we have created our register API route. So now what do we want to do next? We want to create our login route. So with an API, we're going to create a new folder, and this is going to be called login, and we're going to do the same thing here. It's going to be route.js. Great. So within login, what we want to do is actually, let's do this really quickly. So for our register, we want to put in a basic email validation, so regex. And what we want to do is we want to do it here. Let's just do this here really quickly. It's a lot, so I'm just going to copy and paste this. Great. So it's called, I just commented this out. So basic email validation. So if this regex.test email and then return invalid email format with a status of 400. So this is optional. You don't have to put this in there, but if you want it, then here you go. So we move on. So let's close out of that. So for login, what we want to say now is we want to also import that database connect from utils MongoDB. We're going to be importing bcrypt from bcrypt. Now we're going to be importing sign JWT from Jose, and then we're going to say const secret is equal to process.env.jwt secret. Awesome. So within my .env file, like I said, I have a bunch of things in there already. One of them is my JWT secret. I saved it as a JWT secret. What you want to do is create that secret, and we're going to be using it when we want to create our cookies and our token and things like that. So my past videos, any video that has authentication authorization has the right process or a good process of creating a secret. But if you just want to create a secret by using any old string, you can go ahead and do that. Just make sure it's not something that's easily decipherable. Decipherable. Or you can just go ahead and watch my other videos on how to create authentication and authorization, and you're going to see how to create a proper JWT secret using the crypto package within Node. So yeah, let's move on. Now we can say export async function post, and this is going to be request, and what we're going to be saying here is await database connect. Cool. Now what we're going to say is const username and password, because that's all the two things those are the only two things we need to log in. We're going to say await request.json. Cool. Now we're going to have a try catch. Within our try, we're going to say if there's no username or there's no password, then we want to return next response.json stating message please provide credentials, and this is going to have a status code of 401. Else, if we do have it, then we want to say const user is equal to await user dot find one, and this time we're going to be using username. Awesome. And we're going to say if there is no user, then we want to return the same thing. So next response.json, and this message is going to say invalid. It should be a string, invalid credentials, and we should have a status as well of 401. Cool. Now after this, we're going to create our JWT secret. So we already created it. Now we're going to encode it. So we're going to say JWT secret is equal to new text encoder. There we go. New text encoder dot encode, and we're going to say secret. So that's the package Jose's method of encoding the secret. Now, after doing that, we want to create our token. So we're going to say const token is equal to await new sign JWT, and we're going to be using user ID, which is going to equal user.id. Okay. Why not? That's fine. So we can say set protected header, and set protected header is going to be algorithm, and it should be HS2 256. Cool. Dot set expiration time, and it's going to be 1 hour, and we're going to sign with our JWT secret. Awesome. So the await works now. Great. So now what we want to say is we want to write this to show that our to see if our application is in production mode. So we're going to say const is production, and we're going to say process.env.node env is equal to production. There we go. So within my .env, I have this. So I have this within my .env, just node underscore env equals development. That's all that's there. That's what this node env is. It just says node underscore env is equal to development. And the reason I have that is because here we're going to be using it to see if our application is in production. So if our application is in production, then there's a next step to it, but it's using development to know if it's in development or it's in production. So here we go. We can now state const response. So we're going to create a response is equal to next response.json message, and this message is going to say sign in successful. There we go, sign in successful, and we're going to have a status of 200. Cool. Now we can go ahead and say response dot cookie. So we want to set our cookies dot set, and here's where we're going to be needing that production that is production. We're going to say the name of our cookie is auth token. We're going to say the value is token. We're going to say the path is just a backslash HTTP only. This is going to be true. Now we're going to say max age, and this is going to be, I believe, 3600. Yeah, I think it's 3600 because it's in seconds. We're going to say secure now, and secure is going to have this is production. So meaning if it's in production, then secure is going to be true. If it's in development, which is what we have in our .env, secure is going to be false. That's all. That's the only reason we needed that. And here we're going to say return response. Again, save that, and then let's come over here, and then here we can say console.log error, and then we can say return next response.json, and we're just going to say message internal server error, and here we're going to say status of 500. Cool. Okay, so that's it basically. So we have our login created. So that's all we needed to do for both our login and our register. So the next thing we want to do is create our logout. So we're going to say new folder, logout, new file, route.js. So the logout API is pretty simple. So what we're going to say is export function, and this is going to be a get. We're going to say const is production as well, is equal to process.env.node env is equal to production. There we go. And within this function, we're going to state const response is equal to next response not that. It's equal to next response, there we go, .json, and we're gonna say message logged out successful. Let's say successfully. There we go. So logged out successfully. That's status of 200. Cool. And now we can say response dot cookies dot delete, and we're gonna be deleting auth token. There we go. Actually, just a comma. And then we're gonna say path here is gonna be this. We're gonna have secure, and this is gonna be is production. Great. And we just have to return it. So return response, and that's it. We have our logout. We have our logout API configured, so that's practically it. So now what we want to do is create our middleware. In my previous videos, not the last one, but the one before that, we went over middleware quite extensively. So I'm not going to really do that in this one. I will write the code out with you guys, but I'm not going to go over it extensively. So here I'm going to say new file, and it's going to be middleware. We're just going to call it middleware.js. And for this, we're going to be importing JWT verify. There we go. And let's use const secret is equal to new text encoder, not decoder, encoder. There we go. And this is going to say dot encode process.env dot JWT secret. There we go. So we just get that out the way. And now we can say export async function middleware. And we're going to take in the request. And here we're going to say const path is equal to request dot next URL dot path name, which yeah, let's just break it down. So request dot next URL dot path name, and now we can say const is public path, which is equal to that path, which is equal to a backslash or path is equal to slash register. So we're saying if the public path is equal to basically the home path, so this backslash or the backslash register. So we're going to be using this backslash as our login page. So let's move on. So we're going to say if there's no token and the path is in public, so is public path, then we want to state return next response.json, and it should say new URL. There we go. Backslash request.url. There we go. So that's what we're gonna have for that, and we're gonna have an else if. So we're gonna say else if we have token. So we have the token. Cool. Then we're gonna say try catch. Try catch. There we go. So within try, we're gonna say const payload is equal to await JWT verify, and we're just going to take in that token and the secret. because we want to grab the payload. So we're going to say const token expiration. We have to keep that in mind. So we have to be conscious of when the token expires. So new date payload dot expiration times 1,000. And here we're going to say if token expiration, there we go, is less than or equal to new date, then we want to state return next response dot JSON. Actually, you know what? We could just copy it. We don't have to rewrite it. It's the same thing as up here. Cool. Else we want to return next response dot let's see. No, we still have to write another if. So we have that if, and then we can say if there is public path. So if it's a public path, then we want to say return next response dot redirect. There we go. And we're redirecting to a new URL, and we're redirecting to the hero page and request dot URL. Cool. And then here we can now say return next response dot next. Cool. And then for the error, we're just going to say console dot error, and here we're going to say authentication error, and then error. And then at the bottom here, we're going to say return next response dot redirect, and it's going to say new URL backslash same thing, and it's going to be request dot URL. Cool. And then let's see. Yep, right here we're going to say return next response dot next. So we're practically done with our middleware .js file. So all we have to do now is create our matcher. So we're gonna say export const config is equal to, and then we're gonna have the matcher here. And all this is doing is it's gonna place the routes that we're gonna be using this middleware for within it. So we're gonna say we're gonna use the backslash, we're gonna use the slash register, we're gonna use slash hero, and then we're gonna use slash saved. These are all the routes that the middleware is gonna be working on. So we're pretty much done with that. Let's scroll up here. Okay, so one thing we missed is we didn't define token. So token here should be this. So token should be const token is equal to request.cookies.get. The name of the cookie is auth token. And then if we have that, then the value, or we can just have an empty string. So that's what it is. So since we're done with this now, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and create our user API route. What the user API route does is it grabs information from our cookie. So it takes our user information and then it sends it over to the front end using AuthContext. We can then use the data we receive and use that data throughout our front end. So let's go ahead and create that API route. So within API, we're just going to go ahead and click new folder. And then with this new folder, what we're going to have is the user. So we're going to call this user. And with user, we're going to have a new file called route.js. So within route.js, what we want to do is import our user from at. So why is this not working for us? So at, okay, so it'll be at models / user. So let's see, let's make sure this is in the right spot. So it's within that. Okay, that should have auto imported, but I guess it's just not doing that. So db connect from at utils / Mongo DB. And then here we're going to say import JWT verify from Jose. And then we can say import mongoose from mongoose. So let's go ahead and do this. So export a sync function get user data. And here we're going to be passing in the request. What we're going to say here is const secret is going to equal new text encoder dot encode process.env.jwt secret. Great. Okay, and then we can now have const token. Well, let's just copy and paste that. Yep, so it's going to be the same token that we used within middleware. So we're going to have that. And now we're going to state if there's no token, then we want to return null. And this null is stating if there's no token found, user is not authenticated. That's what it's stating. And then we can say try catch. Within try, we're going to say const payload is equal to await JWT verify dot actually JWT verify token and secret. Awesome. Now we can now state actually within after that we want to create this object. So now we can state algorithms and algorithms is going to be H2 HS256. Awesome. We can now return the payload. So payload dot user ID. And then for catch, what we're going to state is console dot error error getting user data. And here we're going to be passing in error. Cool. This should be within here. Now here we're going to say return null. Awesome. So let's do that. Now we want to write a separate function down here that's going to say export a sync function. And this is going to be a get. And then we're going to have request passed in. And here we're going to say await db connect. And we're also going to say const user ID is equal to await get user data. So we're calling on that function above, and we're going to pass in that request. And now we could say, we're going to say if there's a user ID, then we want to return, well, if there's not a user ID, then we want to return next response.json. And this is going to be message user not found. Well, user not authorized. There we go. So now we also want to check MongoDB for that user ID. So we're going to say if there's no mongoose dot types dot object ID dot is valid, and we're going to pass in that user ID. Then we want to return next response.json message invalid user ID. And now we can say let's see, actually we can come down here, try catch, and within try we're going to say const user is equal to await user dot find by ID user ID dot select username. Awesome. So now if there's no user, then we want to state return next response.json, and the message here is user not found. And now we can return, if there is a user, next response.json with the message user found. Cool. So for the error, we're going to say console.error, error. And here we can say return next response.json user message and for message we're going to say user found. And now wait, hold up. So this is for the error, right? So here the error is going to say so here we're supposed to pass in the user, so let's pass in the user here. There we go. And then here there we go. Here the message is user not found, or we just say error passing. Let's say error fetching user. Cool. So here we're getting the username. If there's no user, we're going to say user not found. If there is a user, we're passing that user to the front end. So we're responding with that user with the message user found. And then if there's an error, we console error, and then return next response.json message error fetching user. So that's pretty good. Now we're pretty much done with our backend here. So let's close out of this. And in our front end, what we want to do is we want to create our auth context. So for auth context, we're going to go to our source folder. We're going to create a new folder. And within this folder, we're going to call this context. And then within our context, we're going to create an AuthContext.js. So first, we're going to start out by saying use client. Now we're going to say import React from React. And then we're going to state use effect, create context, use context. And this is all from React. And then we're going to state import Axios from Axios. And now we can go ahead and state const AuthContext is equal to create context. And then we're going to say export const use auth is equal to arrow function. And here we're just going to have return use context. And then here it's going to be auth context. Awesome. And now we can create another function that's going to state, let's space this out a bit. So here we're going to have const auth provider, and then we're going to say children in here. And then here we're gonna go ahead and use our state variables. So we're gonna say const user and set user is equal to use state, and this is going to be set to null initially. And we're going to have const user ID, so user ID set user ID, and this is going to be equal to use state, and it is also going to be null. And then lastly, we're going to have const loading and set loading, and this is going to be use state, and this is going to be false. Well, true. Let's start. So it's going to be true at first. So these are the three state variables we're going to be using at first. So it's going to be const user set user, which is going to be null, user ID set user ID, which is going to be null, and then loading set loading, which is going to be true. Cool. Now within this, we can now create our fetch data. So fetch data is equal to async. It's an arrow function, and here we're gonna say try. And this one's gonna look a little weird because we're gonna just destructure it. So we're gonna say const and then data here, and this is gonna be user, and user is gonna be user object. Awesome. Is equal to we're gonna say await. So let's make sure we have a catch here. Cool. So this is going to be await And when we say await, we're going to have axios.get. We're going to be using API /user. So /API/user. So because we're going to be retrieving the username and the user ID. So now we can set the user to userObject.username. And we can set the user ID to userObject dot, and this one's going to be underscore ID. And now we can set loading to false. Cool. Now for the catch, we're just going to put error in here. And for the catch error, we're going to say console.error error. And then we're going to state set user to null. And we're going to use set loading to false. We're going to set loading to false. So with that done, let's scroll up here. We're going to invoke useEffect. And here we're going to be fetching that data. So fetch data. Cool. Now we want to return, let's do this. We want to return AuthContext.provider with the value that we're going to be using throughout our front end, which is going to be user set user ID set user ID and then fetch data. Cool. We can now state loading children or null. So if the item is not loading, then show children. If not, then null. So show nothing. So that's practically it. Now we can now state export default auth provider. Cool. So that's pretty much it for our auth context. We're pretty much done with this. Now all we want to do is now place that within our layout. So we want to go over to our layout here, which is within our app folder. So we go ahead and click layout, and where we see body here, we want to encapsulate the children with auth provider, and let's bring this and auth provider here as well. Cool. So now all those values are going to work within our children. So meaning the whole front end for the most part. And then we can close out of that. So one thing I forgot to do, let's run over to API. And for login, let's open that up really quickly. One thing I forgot to do within login was here we said if there's a username, then we want to do this. However, because our password in our database is hashed, we want to make sure that the password that's inputted into our input field within our login input field, and that's saved in our database from register, are comparable. So we want to make sure that they equal the same thing since it's hashed. So how we go about that is we have to come down here, because this is for if there is a user. So we want to continue that by stating const is password valid equal to await bcrypt dot compare, and we're going to be comparing password with user dot password. And we're going to say if is password is not valid, so password isn't valid, then we want to say return next response.json with the message invalid credentials, and with a status of 401. Oh, that's why. There we go. So invalid credentials and then status of 401. And then we're all set. And then you can just go ahead and continue with that. So that's pretty much it. So now that we have AuthContext and everything set up, what we want to do is we want to create our nav. So we're going to set that up in part 2. So in part 2, we're going to be doing our nav, login, register, hero portion, and then backend that corresponds to our actual application. So right now, for part 1, what we just did was mostly auth. So we're setting up our auth, our user modal, connecting to our database, things like that, just so we can get it out the way. We don't have to worry about it in the future parts. I'm thinking this is going to go up to like part 3. Part 4 might be the AI. I might be able to squeeze that into part 3, but this is a huge application. It does have a lot of features. So with all that said, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on part 2. Peace.